Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Al 24 Midnight Bulletin. I'm your host, Miriam Zian, and here are your top stories. 76 people were killed in 8 massacres committed by the Zionist occupation forces in the Gaza Strip, while 110 others were injured in the past 24 hours. And the Euromed monitor revealed shocking testimonies about the cruel torture practices committed by the Zionist occupation against Palestinians. Also coming up, Algeria is ready to host the 7th summit of the Gas Exporting Countries Forum. Hello and welcome again to the program. Palestinian Ministry of Health in the Gaza Strip said Wednesday that the occupation forces committed 8 massacres in the Strip, killing 76 people and injuring 110 others during the past 24 hours. The ministry added that this number does not include victims trapped under rubble or on roads, as the occupation prevents ambulance and civil defense crews from reaching them. And this brings the death toll of the Zionist aggression to 29,954 martyrs and 70,325 injured since the 7th of last October. In the same context, 6 people were killed and a number of others were injured in the town of Al-Qarara, north of Khan Yunis, in the southern Gaza Strip as a result of the renewed Zionist bombing of the eastern areas close to the security fence in the Strip. This comes as occupation aircrafts continue their bombing of various areas of the Gaza Strip on the 145th day of its genocidal war on Gaza, leaving dozens martyred and hundreds wounded. Director of Kamal Adwan Hospital said that the cessation of medical services resulting from the lack of medicines and fuel caused the death of a number of children inside hospital last night. Dr. Hassam Abu Safiya said that the hospital was out of service, noting that when the hospital contacted international organizations, they were unable to come to provide assistance to hospitals in the Gaza Strip. The Euromed Monitor team confirmed that it had received horrifying testimonies from Palestinians and had personally interviewed recently released victims of cruel torture practices of the occupation that appear to have a sadistic bent. The Euromed Monitor added that these attacks have left deep wounds and numerous scars on the survivors' bodies and have negatively affected their psychological health. The rights group also said that it appears from the documented testimonies that the attacks were carried out in retaliation and as collective punishment for being Palestinian. Deputy Director General of the Food and Agriculture Organization FAO, Maurizio Martina, revealed that Israel's aggression against the Gaza Strip had destroyed the fish industry, a vital livelihood for more than 100,000 people, and affected nearly half of Gaza's farming land, pounding the alarm over food insecurity. Addressing the United Nations Security Council meeting on the protection of civilians in armed conflict, the United Nations official said that the entity's aggression had also caused the destruction of more than a quarter of Gaza's wells, significantly affecting the availability of water in the northern Gaza and Gaza City. He also noted that damage to agricultural infrastructure was widespread, affecting mostly sheep and dairy farms.
for human consumption. The people of Gaza are experiencing the catastrophic levels of conflict-induced food insecurity and the high risk of conflict-induced famine. That risk is increasing by the day. The main factors driving this risk are intensified hostilities, further reduction of food access, basic services and life-saving assistance, and extreme concentration or isolation of people in inadequate facilities or areas without basic services. An integrated food security phase classification analysis was released that detailed the levels of acute food insecurity in Gaza. The key findings are extremely troubling.
Relief and Works Agency for Palestine Refugees said on Wednesday that in comparison to January of last year, the number of humanitarian supplies reaching the Gaza Strip in February has dropped by 50%. The UN agency stressed that aid convoys continue to face attacks and are being denied access by occupying forces, as reported on its official website. It highlighted its inability to safely reach areas in northern Gaza and parts of the southern region. Speaking to the Security Council, Palestine's permanent representative to the UN, Riyad Mansour, expressed his displeasure with the international community's lack of action in addressing Gaza's famine, which he said is getting worse every day as a result of the Zionist entity's continuous criminal aggression. Let's take a listen.
By early February 2024, a joint WFP and FAO report on food security in Palestine indicated that Gaza's entire population was suffering acute food insecurity, the highest share of people ever classified as such for any given area or country. That IPC estimates are actually deemed conservative should be a matter of alarm for this Council.
Senior UN humanitarians said over 500,000 of Gaza's citizens are just a step away from famine. This comes as hundreds of humanitarian aid trucks are piled up along the entry points without being able to enter in the Gaza Strip. Nabil Khazini has more details.
Everyone in Gaza today is facing the pain of hunger. Day after day, the scene of people gathering, queuing in line for food is tripling. The desperate search for food is relentless, but most of the times unsuccessful. People in Gaza depend now entirely on food supplies from outside the Strip. But the occupation's declared policy has stated it clear, a total refusal to bring food along medical supplies into the Gaza Strip.
It has become a genocide like we have never seen. Everyone is suffering inside these tents. We are dying slowly. In addition to the high cost of life and the suffering of people, we are suffering enormously. We have been moved 100 times.
The extent of the suffering is clearly visible in many cases, such as the one of this family. Marwan has nothing to give to his children. The main meal of this father's family is cactus.
Today we are living in famine. We have exhausted everything. There is nothing left to eat. We used to eat a plant called mallow. It no longer exists. There used to be carrot, and that is gone. There is nothing left in the markets. So we resorted to the last option, the cactus. We eat cactus, even with its thorns. We eat cactus with its thorns, not without its thorns. We even feed the young children cactus. A little girl is eating cactus, instead of milk, instead of meat, instead of eggs.
The catastrophe of famine is looming on the horizon as the UN has set the alarm, saying that more than 500,000 of people in Gaza are only one step away from famine.
If nothing changes, a famine is imminent in northern Gaza. We must all double down and live up to our responsibilities to ensure it does not happen on our watch.
Everyone here in Gaza asks where to go. Occupation bombing, fatal diseases, and now hunger is becoming another weapon that kills those who fled from the enemy's shelling and tanks to save their lives.
Hamas leader Ismail Haniyeh emphasized in a televised speech that the Zionist enemy in the Gaza Strip has committed the most brutal crimes, genocide and displacement of Palestinians in the history of mankind. Haniyeh also called on Palestinians in the holy city of Al-Quds in the West Bank to march to Al-Aqsa Mosque to pray on the first day of Ramadan on March 10, raising the stakes in the indirect talks for a truce deal to have come into force by then.
يمارس المحتل الصهيوني فيها.
The Zionist enemy in the Gaza Strip has committed the most brutal crimes, genocide and displacement of Palestinians in the history of mankind. It is the duty of the Arab and Islamic nations and the duty of our brothers in neighboring countries to occupied Palestine, to hasten to end the conspiracy of starvation in the northern Gaza Strip. These steadfast people are fighting the battle of the entire nation.
يخوضون معركة الأمة بأسرها.
Palestinian Foreign Minister Riyad al-Maliki said on Wednesday while speaking on the sidelines of the UN Human Rights Council in Geneva that the UN Security Council failed the Palestinian people because of its incapacity to agree on a ceasefire. He also called on the international community to take its responsibilities and to put pressure on the Zionist entity to immediately stop the aggression, to provide protection for the Palestinians, and to ensure the arrival of humanitarian aid to the Gaza Strip.
We are very much disappointed with the Security Council of the United Nations, who has failed all of us, who has failed the people in Gaza. After 4.5 months, still the Security Council is not able to take action in order really just to impose a ceasefire. We do understand that the first step to undertake in any occasions of this nature is for a ceasefire to be achieved. But now in Gaza, it seems that a ceasefire is far-fetched, objective to be attained by the situation there, and as a result, we see people, dying on a daily basis.
The permanent representative of Algeria to the United Nations Office and international organizations in Geneva, Rashid Beldehan, said that the arrogance of the occupying Zionist entity in the Gaza Strip was encouraged by the double standards policy adopted by some parties, as he put it. In his speech during the high-level side event held by the State of Palestine on the sidelines of the 55th session of the UN Human Rights Council, Beldehan stressed that the immunity granted to the Israeli occupation encourages it to continue its crimes.
The heinous practices perpetrated by the barbaric Israeli occupier against the defenseless Palestinian people, ignoring all UN resolutions and international laws, including the international humanitarian law, requires a quick action from the international community to deter this arrogance that is encouraged by the double standards policy adopted by some parties. The unjust immunity granted to this occupying entity and the impunity and non-accountability it is benefiting from up to now has pushed it to continue its tyranny and aggression at a time when several parties are endeavoring to reach a ceasefire, end the bloodshed, and deliver humanitarian aid to help civilians. The occupier carries on its settlement expansion policy, the forced displacement of Palestinians, their starvation, and the preparation to invade areas crowded with displaced people in Rafah and southern Gaza.
The Al-Qassam Brigades, the military wing of the Hamas Islamic Resistance Movement, announced that it fired 2 rounds of 40 rockets from southern Lebanon towards Zionist military sites. Al-Qassam added in a statement on Wednesday that it bombed the headquarters of the 769th Eastern Brigade, Camp Ribour, and the airport barracks in Beit Hillel in response to the Zionist massacres in Gaza and the assassination of the leaders in the southern suburb. The Al-Quds Brigades and the Al-Nasser Salah ad-Din Brigades published scenes of what they said were mortar attacks on positions of the occupation soldiers and vehicles in the vicinity of Eastern Cemetery, east of Jabalia. The Zionist Defense Forces announced that 2 Givati Brigade officers were killed and 26 soldiers were injured in battles in the Gaza Strip during the past 24 hours. The occupation army reported that 3,007 officers and soldiers were injured since the start of the war. 1,429 of whom were injured during the ground attack, including 468 who were seriously injured. We now move to the news of the 7th summit of the Gas Exporting Countries Forum in Algeria after the break. President of the Republic of Mozambique, Philippe Jacinto Nyusi, arrived in Algiers on Wednesday for a friendship and working visit to Algeria upon the invitation of President Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune. Upon his arrival at Houari Boumediene International Airport, the Mozambican president was warmly received by Prime Minister Nadir Al-Arbawi. This visit aims to strengthen and solidify the historical bonds of brotherhood and solidarity between Algeria and Mozambique, and comes just before his participation in the 7th Summit of Heads of State and Government of the Gas Exporting Countries Forum. Algeria is ready to host the 7th Summit of the Gas Exporting Countries Forum GECF, which will kick off a few hours later in the Abdelratif Rahal Conference Center here in Algiers, with the participation of several heads of states and governments, in addition to a plethora of experts and specialists in the energy field. Mohamed Khatel.
Algeria is now ready to host the Summit of Gas Exporting Countries in its 7th edition, after making sure that all logistical and organizational resources were met before the official kickoff of this internationally important event. Here in the capital Algiers, and particularly in the Abdelratif Rahal International Conference Center, which will host the summit, important logistical resources have been mobilized to guarantee an optimal media coverage worthy of the event.
The International Press Center has put at the disposal of journalists 2 fully equipped newsrooms under the aegis of the Communication Minister to guarantee efficiency and a smooth media coverage of this important event, with the aim of ensuring an optimal coverage that lives up to this event of international standard.
The International Press Center ensures all the technical equipment necessary to facilitate the work of Algerian and foreign journalists, as underlined by the technical director, Elias Arier.
As an internal press center, we have mobilized all the technical and human resources for a success and an optimal broadcasting of this event. We have made available 8 television and 6 radio studios, 2 LED screens to broadcast the plenary session and the arrival of the heads of state, ministers, and others. There are offices dedicated to each delegation. We have already some delegations that are here. We are setting them up, such as the delegations of Venezuela, Iran, Iraq, and Qatar, which are already here. We have also provided an international broadcasting center for the worldwide broadcasting. We provide to the national and international media for everything they need.
The success of this important event, which is held amid rapid global changes, constitutes a challenge for the Algerian leadership and all the stakeholders involved in its organization and smooth running. Nonetheless, the 7th summit of the Forum of Exporting Countries also constitutes an opportunity to discuss issues related to the gas industry and debate the role of this resource in the global energy transition. According to experts, the Algiers summit will further consolidate the forum's position as a global platform for dialogue, consultation, and coordination between gas-producing and consuming countries.
To different matters now, Ammar Ben Jama, Algeria's permanent representative to the UN, stated that the UN Security Council's Counter-Terrorism Committee is still in communication with Southeastern European member states regarding ways to guarantee the full execution of Security Council resolutions pertaining to counter-terrorism. Ben Jama emphasized during his presidency of the open briefing session that the signing of strategic cooperation agreements between the nations of Southeastern Europe in the area of counter-terrorism has enhanced bilateral and regional cooperation.
The Counter-Terrorism Committee.
Transnational organized crime, including trafficking in person, smuggling of migrants, and drugs and arms trafficking, which may have linkage to terrorism, represent a major concern. Several member states of Southeast Europe have received the committee's assessment visits, more recently Bulgaria in 2022. Our committee is continuing its constructive dialogue with member states of Southeast Europe on their measures to fully implement relevant Security Council resolution on counter-terrorism.
According to a statement from the Algerian Foreign Ministry, the 11th session of the political consultations between Algeria and France took place in Algiers on Tuesday. The sessions were co-chaired by the Secretary Generals of the two ministries, Lounès Magraman, the Algerian Foreign Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and Anne-Marie Decotte, the French Ministry of Foreign Affairs. The meeting facilitated an extensive assessment of the level of political relations as well as bilateral cooperation in all fields, including economy and migration. The statement also notes that high officials discussed regional and international issues of mutual interest, with a focus on the Sahrawi issue and the current situations in the Sahel, Mali, and the Middle East, particularly the situation in Palestine and the Gaza humanitarian crisis. Sahrawi President Brahim Ghali received a congratulatory message from his Nicaraguan counterpart, Mr. José Daniel Ortega, on the occasion of the 18th or the 48th anniversary of the declaration of the Sahrawi Arab Democratic Republic. According to the Sahrawi news agency, José Daniel Ortega reaffirmed the unwavering commitment of the people and government of Nicaragua to defending the right of Sahrawis to self-determination and the sovereignty of the Sahrawi Arab Democratic Republic. And for more international news, let's follow this report by Marwa Belaiwar.
Protesters briefly clashed with police on Wednesday during a march in Athens by thousands of striking Greek workers and students to mark the anniversary of the country's deadliest train crash and to demand bigger pay rises. Unions called a 24-hour strike which disrupted transport as workers took to the streets to commemorate the death of 57 people when a passenger train from Athens to the northern city of Thessaloniki collided head-on with a freight train 1 year ago. International tourists found themselves stranded in Buenos Aires airport on Wednesday due to a national aeronautic union strike that prompted hundreds of flight cancellations. 3 unions called a 24-hour strike after failing to reach a pay rise agreement with the government as inflation hit 20.6% in January and the annual rate reached 254.3%. At least 70 people died and 12 others were injured on Wednesday when 2 buses collided on a road in northwest Honduras, firefighters said. On the spot, there were 15 dead, 14 injured were transported to the Occidental Hospital in Santa Rosa de Capon, and of the 14, it is confirmed that 2 died, according to AFP. The accident occurred early in the morning on the mountain road between the towns of Santa Rosa de Capon and Gracias, some 220 kilometers northwest of the capital.
That's it for tonight's program. Thank you for tuning in and have a good night.